United Grind Society presents the Turntable, where we discuss everything relevant to hip hop. I am your host, Haiku, and I'm with some of my favorite peoples as the panel. Let me introduce you to them. We have my man Garbs Infinite. We have my man Speed from Rom Royal. We have Siege from E.com.
Three.
And we have Jinx Most High from United Grind. What's going on, fellas?
Ooh,
All right, all right, all right. Yo, this episode is brought to you by the latest release from Vice Soul Electric off United Grind, TRAP, the reality of all people. Make sure y'all check that out on all digital platforms.
It's a war going on outside. I get prepared. I'm here. I think about it every night, man. Yeah. I had a father in my life, man. Taught me my wrongs and my rights, man. Yeah. I had a
Make sure
father.
you visit therealityofallpeople.com when you guys get a chance. Please check that out. Please check that out. Merchandise and all that good stuff is there. So today we are discussing the positive negative cycle in hip hop, gangster rap versus conscious rap. I'm really excited to hear y'all takes on this subject. Really, really excited. Um, as you know, it just kind of seems, and this, I'm just going to speak from my perspective, right? It seems like there is uh, a polarizing effect when it comes to hip hop. It can't be one. It can't be both for a long period of time. It's either one. It's either this side or it's either that side. Um, so to start off the conversation, Jinx, I know you had some audio that you wanted to play a little bit. If you don't have it queued up right now, we
I
can
do.
queue it up later. Okay, let's take a listen.
Yeah, I do. All right.
Who
This
who
is
we got talking? Yeah,
Wise Intelligent. Yeah, this is a little clip from Wise
From
Intelligent
PRT.
and
from
some kind of
PRT, Poor
press
Righteous Teacher.
conference type setting. Yeah. Poor righteous teachers, right.
Of history. It was not a circumstance of history. It was nothing that just happened on its own. It had nothing to do with the changing of the times. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with the fact that there are people in this particular society who wants to see us exactly where we are. And we cannot elude them at that point, elude us. These are the facts. How do we know? 1967, Kerner Commission report on urban disorder. When black people said, yo, we're tired of this system. You know what I mean? This system is oppressing us. So we rebelled against the system. We burned things. We said, yo, we had enough. He did his little report on what caused these riots. He said, what caused these riots? He said it was young children who started these riots, and what motivating them was a high self-esteem and an enhanced racial pride.
So I want to stop it there for a second because that in particular is um, it's very reminiscent as to what we're actually going through right now. I feel like we're seeing this enhanced racial pride that he, in particularly, was more or less referring to the early '90s during the Rodney King trials and things of that nature. And then he goes on to explain that, that this has repeated itself, throughout history. I guess during the '70s and how black exploitation was kind of the version of negative hip hop. Back then it was
Mm.
more or less, these images that we are seeing of ourselves on screen, or the images that are being portrayed through music. We were seeing them on screen in the '70s, and that, in a sense, had kind of
Yeah,
pacified things in the
yeah.
community.
Whenever they get a clue, reinforce negative stereotypes, and
Mm,
that's the playbook. So whenever you see them getting a clue, and they being oppressed people, whenever they start getting a clue and figuring out how to overcome their oppressors, the oppressors feed them negative stereotypes. So the example you gave is black exploitation. So give them pimps and hoes, drug dealers in all their movies over and over and over, and reinforce that negative stereotype. Then it went to music. Oh, they do gangster rap. Reinforce them killing each other over and over and over and over again to reinforce that thought in their heads.
mm. Yeah, I mean, I've seen. you know, different things on the internet kind of detailing, the idea that there's like this secret industry meeting. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before. I was
I've seen
actually
it.
thinking about making it a whole episode that there's like this secret industry meeting, and the idea of the conspiracy being that deep. Um, who's to say? But I think that there are definitely some points and there's some correlation there.
I think it happened. I don't necessarily think there was this big secret meeting. I just think it naturally happened. Big corp. That's what happens in big business. Big businesses
A
are
bunch of
like,
little ones.
yeah, yeah,
A
big
bunch of little
business.
ones.
Yeah, it's like we can't have all these little independent companies running around taking up our market share. Well, let's buy them up,
Mm.
and then we can feed the people whatever we want.
Yeah, which
It
is
didn't. It
actually
didn't
what
take a
happened.
meeting for that to happen. That was
Yeah,
gonna happen.
it happened with
Yeah.
radio. It happened with
Yeah,
record labels.
yeah.
Definitely happened in radio. I think now, though, one thing that is important is things like podcasts and things like what we're doing right here because uh, it gives people an option uh, compared to what's been thrown down their throats.
But even still, Garbs, even with that podcast, relatively, I mean, it's been around for a little bit, right? But you are seeing the same shift, if you will. If you're not careful, those will be bought up by bigger conglomerates as well. If you're not, there are big channels that are gobbling up the ones that are successful. And what proves that is all the ratings. You see what the ratings are. You see who's charting and who's not charting. It's the same thing having a podcast essentially is the same thing as having um, a music group. The difference is that instead of coming out with an album once a year or once every 2 years, you are literally coming out with an EP every week, or in some cases twice a week. So it's a much faster cycle.
Mhm.
um, Speed, I'm interested to get your opinion on this, because you ran an independent label, and I know that you have a little bit different perspective because of that experience. I watched you do it. We was in the battle room together, so to speak, during those years. What's your opinion on conscious rap, gangster rap, and the battle there? Because the label that you ran, or the label that you helped run, very much so, kind of definitely embraced, I would say, the conscious rap. Not all the artists, but a lot of y'all artists were on that tip.
As far as like an indie label, deciding to go the gangster route or the conscious route, I mean, I think it's lanes for all of it somewhere. I think that's, I think the thing, I think is maybe too much weight put on uh mainstreaming of music. You know what I'm saying? Because
Well,
you look
yeah,
at
and you're
hip
also
to
looking
hip,
at being an artist slash, you know, label.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Which is
yeah,
always going to dictate. You're going to, be a little bit more inclined to promote and be attracted to things that you love yourself personally, as why it's so
yeah.
different when it comes to labels. They have no emotional investment in the music at all.
I tell you what, man. Like one of the biggest things I learned because we started from that. I don't even want to say conscious, but we started from that kind of, that lighter kind of hip hop area and moved secondarily after we got a little juice into some more, gangster shit or whatever you want to call it. And what I learned was it is a totally different way of pushing the music. I mean, you cannot push the same way. And we learned that kind of the hard way. It's like, we would do
Is it
things
because
like
you're pushing the two different audiences, or
that's part of it, but it platforms different. So like back in the night, yeah, everybody on this uh, podcast is artists, or were at some point. It was an point in the '90s, in the early 2000s. There was blogs, there was websites, there was, like Garb said, DJs everywhere, and it was thousands of ways to get your music out there as an artist, just wanting to be an artist and giving it to people that did, different things over here. So you have a blog, and that blog specializes in indie stuff, or specializes in underground music, or a radio show like Garbage's radio show that specialized in a certain kind of music or whatever. But at the same time, you did have platforms where you could see all of that, and a lot of that actually was happening in the mainstream. So, on the mainstream level, you would see rap tours and stuff that had like the Ghetto Boys and Fresh Prince. You know what I'm saying? But that could happen on the mainstream because that was all. It wasn't no
Mm,
categories like that. It was all just
That's
music.
yeah.
that's what I'm wanting to get back to. Let's back it up and
Yeah.
see why it was different. Because back in the day, like Speed just said, you could have Tribe Called Quest and NWA on the same ticket, and everybody thought it was cool. Wasn't a problem with it. In fact, you could have had a concert with NWA, Tribe Called Quest, Ghetto Boys, and
De
Fresh
La.
Prince. De La,
Mm.
yes. And you could have saw that, and everybody would have been cool with it. There's no way that happens today.
I
Now,
I want to recall a little something that we had spoke about in a previous episode because um I mean we covered, you know, slightly covered a lot of things that we're talking about in the violence of hip hop episode from season 1.
Yeah,
So I don't want to necessarily rehash a lot of stuff that we talked about there. But one thing that I believe that you had said, Siege, we were talking about in the drugs and hip hop episode, we were talking about the tide turning era, of when certain things started to become a little bit more prevalent. And I had also seen in the Hip Hop Evolution documentary on Netflix this particular viewpoint about Dr. Dre's The Chronic. And I don't want to single it out to be this is the one shining example, but it kind of is because they were talking about the Rodney King situation and the civil unrest and what was going on in the 90s and how the Chronic became this ridiculous landmark release from Dr. Dre and how all the civil unrest, all of that pent up energy, it became a party. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
the Chronic more or less was a party, even though you can classify it as gangster rap, it was more or less about okay, let's let our hair down. And I think if you really think about in each instance throughout history, you'll kind of see different examples of that. How these periods of civil unrest, like Rodney King, was what maybe about 2-3 years. This period of civil unrest that we're in right now can really be traced back to like 2013. To be honest,
At
ever since
least,
Trayvon Martin, yeah, ever since
Yeah.
Trayvon Martin, it's
yeah.
become this. You know what I'm saying? So I think we get to a point where it's just like as a people that we just want to say, look, we're tired. We want to party. You know what I'm saying?
It's
And
funny that you
a lot of
mentioned that
times it comes down to that.
because the more I think about it, since you just said that, the more I think about it, the Chronic was probably the first album I can think of that romanticized gangster lifestyle. Like they made it fun.
Fun.
Like before that, gangster rap
Hmm.
albums were to the
Mad.
point, smash you in the
Yeah.
face
Mad.
to the
Hard.
point.
kind of
Pain.
cautionary,
Yeah.
cautionary
Yeah.
tales.
The Chronic actually was like, yeah, we Crips and it's fun. Yeah, we just shot up these dudes. Let's go party. You know what I'm saying? It romanticized the whole thing. Now that you mention, I never thought of it like that.
I never did
And
either. That's a really good point.
when you think about the early 2000s, and you think about Dipset era. I mean, Snap Rap era. You think about these, early 2000 era, like where hardcore gangster rap wasn't necessarily the thing, but it was still centered. The content was centered. It was thug content. It was thugging content. It was more or less romanticizing the lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Here's the
saying?
difference.
Less about the pain and the things that caused it, more or less about glorifying and making
Right.
it. And I think that's when this particular wise, intelligent
Yeah.
interview
Made this
went
statement.
down around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the difference that I would say between a lot of the quote unquote gangster rap that came out in the 90s and the conscious rap that came out in the 90s. And I put the quote unquote conscious rap in the 90s.
Yeah, because it wasn't even called that back then.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was like, oh, they dropping some gems in this record. Because artists like Wu-Tang still drop gems. And
We're using the
I think
we're using the word very loosely, just
Right,
so
right,
everybody
right.
knows.
right now it's more defined. You know, they defined it. But
Yeah.
the thing is,
Because of labels, but yeah, go ahead.
here's the difference between then and now is going back to what you said about the labels getting just bought up and just absorbed into all these other massive companies. Same thing with with media as well as the labels, and everything became cookie cutter. Now in the early 2000s, what one thing that actually changed it too was the payola situation that changed radio completely. And if y'all remember back to that time, there was a time period when we all used to go to the clubs, early mid 2000s, where they still played R&B records at the at a certain point in time in the club. You know what I mean? And it was an actual R&B set. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't recall that happening as in recent years anytime soon.
Has it happened recently, Speed?
Ah.
Me,
Who's
folks.
been to the club? Who's been to the club lately?
That's what.
I'm like, what you asking me for?
Let me clarify when I say recently. I'm talking about within
I
the
know.
past
I
year.
I just said
I
because
at
Speed is
tail
the
end
most
of it.
clubbingest dude out of all five of us.
No, he wasn't.
I
I,
don't
Oh,
know
No,
about
he
that.
Speed was
wasn't.
King Club.
I don't know about
No,
that.
trust me, he wasn't,
I don't know about
Oh,
that.
you was clubbing Jinx?
bruh.
Yeah, I know James was clubbing. I was
Fuck
clubbing too.
out of here.
You
Go
know,
ahead though.
with Payola changed the sound on the radio
Yeah, by design.
by design. And
By design. It's almost like the music industry is like the sports industry. You know how they always say football is a copycat league? Well, if one team realizes, oh, we're just gonna pass every down, then every other team starts doing that. Same thing happened with record labels. They said, you know what? We don't have to invest in A&Rs and groom these groups. We can get these dudes to get a hot single, and then when they're done, we can get another dude and do the same thing. It became, like you said, cookie cutter, and there was a formula, and that pretty much got rid of, because there was no formula to conscious rap. Not that I can remember, but there definitely was a formula to
I think what would
negativity.
have been
The only
what have
formula was had by Raucus, and
Yeah,
that was very short lived in
yeah,
terms of
because they
I think
bought them up.
Raucus era.
what would have been called conscious rap back then, what was looked at more as gimmicky back then, because like when De La Soul dropped, well, not De La Soul, let's say Tribe Called Quest. Tribe Called Quest, well, it wasn't like they was a bunch of Marcus Garveys or some shit. These dudes was, they was
Because it
making
wasn't
like
conscious rap; it
Yeah,
was
there
just
was no
rap.
such thing as
I mean,
conscious
but
rap.
they was
Right,
right.
right.
They was because they was in that lane. That's what they was, classified as.
Conscious
Eventually, yeah,
rap, conscious rap was created out of the necessity because of what the labels was doing. It was
yep,
the antithesis of what was going on. Up until
yep,
then, it was just rap. It was just hip hop.
All
yep.
right. Well, so
You
so
know what I'm
so
saying?
so why don't we do this then? Why don't you give me a couple of examples of conscious rap? Give me some examples. I mean, I think I know what you're talking about, but I'm trying to do this for the listener. Examples of conscious rap, in response to what the labels are doing. What groups are we talking about?
Honestly, if I were to identify an actual conscious rap era, I would have to identify it as the Ruckus era, as the Most Def, as the Talib Kweli. Like they were specifically the antithesis of what was going on. They even had like on the back of the Black Star cover, it was copying like the pen and pixel covers that was going on. Like they were intentionally going against the grain of what was
Public
going on in
Enemy,
the
X
industry.
Clan, if you want to go further back.
See, but with
Further
rock,
back, yes, because that was actually just rap with the message. But I think what we
Modern,
consider to be
modern,
conscious, modern
modern
conscious
day,
rap,
modern day. I say J Cole, um, maybe Kendrick. Um,
yeah, they are intentionally going against the grain.
yeah,
but with
You
Ruckus
see
though,
J. Cole's
here's
hair?
one thing that I
There
have
ain't
to
no
say.
reason for that.
here's one thing about the
You ain't
rocket
right.
side here. Let me comment on this because like, we used to do the street team stuff for that here, saying D Loran and Mick and all that. You know what I mean? So Ruckus also had Big L, and on the lyricist lounge they had MOP and Coogee Rap. So I don't know. Granted it was a little bit different, and the Smut Peddlers. You can't call the
I'm
Smut
just
Peddlers.
talking. I'm talking about the era. I'm not saying
You talking
Rawkus
about
was
that
a
is
conscious
knowledge,
label.
Garbs. What you talking about? They had a message.
Well, I'm
I'm just talking about the era. I'm not talking about raw. I'm not talking about the label specifically. I'm just talking about the era during
The
that time.
Rawkus era.
Yeah.
Josie.
Yeah, I think when it gets down to it, the problem is balance. Like back in the day, like we were saying, and I know we touched on it before, but you could have a NWA and a Tribe Called Quest. There was space for both of them. Nowadays, it is since you bought up all the labels, there are limited opportunities for releases to come out on majors. So if it seems like all of the conscious rap has got crushed and pushed out, and the same things being pushed over and over and over. Like let me make a point. When I was young, I listened to a lot of gangster rap, and I do feel that the gangster rap I listened to was a lot more harsh and crazy than the stuff that's out now. But it wasn't as readily available. It wasn't every song was like that. Like you had some terrible artists that were talking some crazy stuff back in the day that were affiliated with the Ghetto Boys and things like that. But
You
that
made
wasn't
that point on
that
season
was
1, episode 2 of the
did we?
Turntable. You made that exact same point. Yes, you
But
did.
oh, well, to reiterate, it wasn't as readily available, and I think that's the
True.
problem between
It's true.
conscious and gangster is so much more readily available than conscious rap is. If there was
I
a
think a lot
balance,
of I think
To me,
a
right
lot of
now, there is more of a balance in
There-
the industry or in music period than there has been probably
Mm,
I
spanning
disagree.
from.
I
I
I
disagree.
mean,
don't know.
Here's
who
why
who
I agree with Jinx. Let me throw this out.
Mm.
Here's the thing, is because I kind of agree with Jinx on this, because the fact is that the playing field has become a lot more level. No, you may not have $1 million to uh, invest in Instagram or
You,
Facebook ads, but
right.
We're not talking about Othello, okay? We're talking about people that you can find their music
a lot of
and
stuff. But here's the thing. This is my point. Let me
bruh,
make my point. The thing is that with the internet is that you don't need a label to actually go viral. There's a lot of videos that went viral without actually that had a point or a message. Joyner Lucas, for example, had some dropped some gems in a lot of his songs before he actually had some sort of deal. That
I don't know about that. But I
now,
feel you. I feel what you're saying.
you see what I'm saying? There's other
I
things.
think
oh
he had
man,
some ghost backing, but I feel you.
The same thing with A1.
underground Drake.
A1 was another one. Same thing with Four Eyes.
But you know what though? Here's my thing though. It's funny that both you and Jinx agree on this point. I do agree with Siege on
Who's
this
that
point.
talking?
Let me calm down.
I can't
Calm
see
down.
him.
You know what? What do
Yeah,
you mean you
turn the
can't
light
see?
on.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Thank you. So it's interesting that you two agree on this because I would say this Jinx and most definitely Garbs. You guys listen to more music than almost anybody I know. So it's very, I think you got to keep that in mind. I talk to a lot of people that have never heard of some of the groups that I'm mentioning. Now, I'm not saying the groups aren't out there. I think things like Spotify and YouTube, Instagram, I think those vehicles are awesome, and they put people that have never had any type of influence or whatever sway in different areas across the country, right? I mean, there's more avenues than ever, but unless you got somebody tapping you on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, Year of the Ox is a dope group," you might not ever hear of.
I'm not even talking about these lesser known individuals. I'm
Yeah,
talking
let me
about the mainstays. I'm talking
let,
about the Kendricks, the Cole, the Kanye. I'm talking about the Childish Gambino. I'm talking about the Childish whatever
Gambino,
the niggas,
let
yeah,
let me
Chance the Rappers.
let
I'm
me
talking about mainstay
Look,
artists.
hey,
I,
look. This is what I see. This is what I
Name
see
any
going
of
today.
those artists that could be top selling artists in
So, all right. So
2005.
back in the day, KRS came out firing guns, and then you bought the album, and he was kicking knowledge. And to some degree, that's what I see in a lot of the mainstream artists right now. So you got people like Kendrick, you got people like Royce 5'9", you got people like name them, Drake. A lot of these cats is out here, finding some kind of happy medium between gangster, uh, hood, street type stuff and having something to say. Royce's last project was very sharp, very well written, and had a lot to say
that's because
in that
he's changed.
conscious
Royce
lane.
has changed as a person.
But I think it's a lot more. I think you didn't see that before in the era that we talking about. That when you saw like one artist, Ti is another one. Where you see one artist to represent something so impressively, and then when it's time to kick something, he can do that very well too. You do see a lot more of that today
I
in the
agree with
mainstream
that.
artists.
Let me touch on why I said I disagree, Jinx. I feel what you're saying, and your point is well taken. The reason I was saying I disagree is because if I go outside right now and a car drives by, that car is going to be playing trap music. You don't hear anything else in the streets, okay, with coming out of anybody else's system. The era when there was balance, you could hear anything coming out of somebody's car. That doesn't happen anymore. What I'm saying is, it may not be necessarily gangster, but what you hear on a regular basis is the same thing over and over
That
again.
that wasn't my argument. Let me reiterate. I said more now than ever before or in a long time are we hearing a balance
I would say,
versus
yeah,
the
in a
era
long
that we
time.
came out of.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Cause 2005 was very hideous.
It wasn't
It
just
was very
2005, but
hideous.
yeah,
I'm just saying, it's a you know 10-year period. You know
that's
what I'm
when the
saying?
labels were buying up everything.
It was ridiculous. I mean, Kanye West was really the marking point of the shift in music. Kanye West. Before then, his label didn't want to put him out. You know what I'm saying? He was the actual marking point of the change of the shift to where we are getting more artists that can be top tier artists. Granted, they're not the majority, but the fact of the matter is that
Which album,
some
James?
of the top tier artists are actually
College Dropout.
conscious.
College Dropout.
It's 2005, so I
Yeah,
think it
College
had to
Drop,
be.
the one where he
Yeah.
beat 50.
So are we
When he
saying
beat 50.
no? That wasn't.
No,
He
no, no,
beat,
that was graduation. That was
yeah.
graduation.
Graduation's what beat 50.
Yeah, yeah.
So are we marking
That was the
graduation
point of the
as the
shift.
turning point, like the Chronic was back in '93 or
I
'92,
think it
whenever the
was.
Chronic came out? So Kanye is the
Uh,
pivot point.
Hmm.
It's changed my
Well, that,
mind.
No, I'm not
It
disagreeing.
changed my
I'm,
mind.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm trying to
What was
see
2005?
what everybody else thinks.
When did Jeezy come out though? Jeezy was
Who?
around the same time period, right?
exactly.
Jeezy was amongst that time era. The
Yeah.
Jeezy era, the
He was
Snowman
like a
era,
huge,
the
he was a
Snap
huge.
Rap era.
Mike
What
Jeezy
Jones,
is
was
who?
the turning point though.
I can barely hear you, Garbs.
I said Jeezy was a big turning point. Can you hear me now?
turning to
Yeah,
what?
yeah, he was. He was.
He-
He was.
Turning to what?
His impact. I mean, think about this.
Impact.
People were bootlegging the Snowman shirts and selling them all over. Like
Yeah.
that dude had copyright infringements in every single major city across the country.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Like
That was a
Tupac,
marking point. That was a point of realization for me as to where the game was when Jeezy came out. You know what I'm
And
saying?
what
Like to
what
me,
did it
I equate
signify?
that.
What did it signify where the game was at? Because I'm confused.
Okay, when Jeezy came out, you know what I'm saying? He got so much flack for the snowman t-shirt, the shirt with the actual snowman on it
Hmm.
as the representation of cocaine.
Yeah.
So he got so much flack for it. But the thing is that people were wearing it. It was so widespread as far as that's what Garbs was talking about because he actually was suing people for copyright infringement for his snowman logo, and
So
it
are we
just got
saying?
so big.
So are we saying Kanye was ushering in a conscious type movement, and Jeezy was re-ushering in coke rap?
I'm saying it was Jeezy was right before it was. I'm sure it was before graduation. I mean, didn't happen
It was
immediately.
2005.
I mean, it was yeah. You know what I'm
His
saying?
motivation was 2005.
So, well, here's where we are, at least to me, in the conversation. So, where are we in 2020? We talked
I
about
don't even think there
2005.
is gangster rap these days. I don't feel like there is a such thing. I could be out
But,
the loop,
but
but
here's,
I'm a
You
little
don't
bit
think
out the
Griselda's
loop, but
gangster?
I don't agree with that. But let me throw this out here. So here's one thing that's happening that I see happening is if you all saw the baby's new single, new video, you know
I
what I
didn't.
mean?
What
You should
was it?
watch. You know what I'm saying? And
What was it?
are
got
you
him. I
talking about
think
the one that he did for the BET Awards? Because he did that specifically. The
okay. I
one
didn't
where
know.
the police is on his neck. The
Yeah, I saw
police is
that.
on the yeah,
Right.
yeah. That was
So,
the
so
BET
that
Awards performance.
Okay,
so
yeah, I saw
that
that.
right there, to me, from my perspective, is like what is exactly what we need. We need artists like that.
I think
You know,
that was Speed's point,
that's,
where people get you, they hook you, and then they can feed you the message.
yeah,
See, this is the thing. This is the thing, though, because I did see that video performance and I was like, okay, I see what he's doing. The imagery is there. The Black Lives Matter imagery, the cop on his neck. I see what he's doing visually, but the verse was all about killing niggas. All
yeah.
about
And
killing
I
niggas.
didn't, I didn't rock with that. I thought it was gonna go a different direction personally,
Right.
but
Well, I had heard the song
But
before, so I knew
but it
that's
was the song.
I'm with
Yeah, he had the song and he shot the video for the performance. So it wasn't necessarily the visual that he,
I wasn't
probably
aware. But
Hmm.
but here's the thing: is that things like that can affect some change because an artist like that with making the type of music that he does, I think that that actually can have a positive influence on those that listen to his music. You know what I mean? Because even if the music still is on doing talking about some other stuff, I still think that it can have a different effect from my perspective.
I mean
And
I agree, man. I mean, we're all nuanced, you know what I'm saying, in terms of, things that we believe and things we see. So I don't necessarily look at it as, like him, like I don't look at it as him being like a hypocrite or anything like that. I just look at it as not being a clear line, like as to where you stand. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
it's
think one
it's
of the things about 2020 as opposed to like the 90s or late 80s or early 90s and gangster rap and stuff is that some of it is so desensitized to that stuff now. It's hard for us to see gangster rap in a way like like the way cats make music now. We don't. It's not like I think we almost waiting to see something like Brother Lynch Hung or some of that early ghetto boy stuff where it was just like total like, and then I shot him in the eye and stabbed him in the knee, and cats ain't doing that no more. So now it's
oh,
more just like street rap. You know what I'm saying? So
why is Haiku in the shadows like goddamn
I
Batman,
asked
nigga?
that
If you
an
don't,
hour ago. I
yeah,
asked that an hour ago.
like
Looking like a ghoulish figure. He was just in the
he
background
was
like,
he was
I'm
lurking,
Batman ass.
looking like
Y'all got jokes.
oh,
Y'all
Haiku,
got
nice of
jokes.
you to join us.
hey, there
I've
you
been here. I've been here.
Good to see you. Hey, so I got
Uh,
a question. I got a
But here's
question.
the thing about the Ghetto Boys, though, since you just brought up the Ghetto Boys, is that they also had a balance in their music as well. They still
yeah,
had
they
Most
they
gangster
did.
rappers back then did. Most of them
Yeah,
did.
and that's part of the point.
Here's
You
my
know,
question though. Here's my question. Uh, Give me an example of some gangster street level rap, modern.
Griselda.
Nipsey.
Nipsey, Griselda.
See, but
Anybody else got an
Nipsey,
example?
I think Nipsey
MOP.
was gangster, but I think he had a balance because he was still dropping
He
a lot of.
was, but
But
he
he's still,
was.
but he's still street though, right? Still
Okay,
street.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so here's
Nipsey comes from the school of that, the school of the ghetto boys, the school of like he's from that. So the
Right.
idea is to put what's the term, sugar in the medicine or whatever the fuck that
yeah,
was,
yeah.
you know.
So
Go
here's my
ahead.
question. Do you think today's average rap listener, rap fan, listens to Nipsey, Griselda, or whoever else, and also listens to Chance the Rapper and Cole?
A lot of people do. Some people do. I mean,
I
it's
think if
I'm
you're a
just
fan
curious.
of Nipsey and Griselda, that you are that you can digest a little bit think
Just
content a little bit left
Yeah,
of
that's
that.
gonna,
I think
yeah.
if you're digesting like the baby and you're digesting like Lil Baby and shit like that, you're not coming over to the Chance the
exact,
Rapper side
and that was
primarily.
my point. That was my
Yeah,
point. There was a shift sometime in the 2000s, and I started noticing it. Like if you listen to street level rap, that's what you were listening to. You wasn't listening to anything else, and vice versa. If you were listening to Raucous, then all you couldn't touch the street stuff. And
that's why I'm an anomaly because
it
I
wasn't
listen to all that
well,
shit.
that's what I was
since
gonna say.
when?
I don't I don't necessarily.
Who are you, and what have you done with Jinx?
Nigga, what?
This is my
No, no, but here's one argument against that though, Siege. Here's one argument against that. The society that we live in right now is such a microwave society, right? It's such a microwave. I don't listen to an album unless I really, really enjoy it. And I know the kids got to be the same way. They listen to something, boom, next, 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 next.
But you
And
got ADHD.
okay, we
I
got
don't know if you.
ADHD.
I don't know if
We
you're a
do.
great.
Stop it.
All right.
All of
see, but here's the thing. To go back on what you just said, um, like I think I agree with Jinx right there because the thing is that a lot of people years ago, even in the early 2000s when the shift was happening, whatever, like a lot of people just aren't exposed to stuff. And if they aren't exposed to stuff, they're not gonna hear it. That's where like, a lot of the stuff that we did with pandemic was, all over the place. You know what I mean? It just was. But it was still lyrical content. And the fact is that a lot of the stuff that I would spit about, if you promote it to people and and it's dope and it sounds good, the delivery is good and it has a message to it, people will listen to it. But if they're not exposed to it, like if you just be like, oh man, that's they're not gonna they're not gonna mess with my music because they listen to such and such. But if you don't approach them with it, then how do you know? That's always been my approach. It's like you never know.
You know what's funny about the 2000s for me? Back, I always say like back when we all used to do a lot of performances and stuff like that. I would notice that even the cats that like street music or gangster rap or whatever you want to call it, um, did not like those performances at shows. But
Oh,
like
because they suck.
right, but we were
They
all like
suck.
we would all do our thing, and those same cats that was like trap music, whatever it is, whatever it was called back then, was
Oh my
digging like
god,
the
bro.
stuff that we was doing, or like our kind of lane of
Have you ever seen a walkthrough performance? A
what's that?
walkthrough performance. That's when the club promoter pays an artist to walk through the club. He's not there to rap, right? But he's just
Uh,
walking through the club. He's just there for the atmosphere and let people know, hey, such and so's in the house. But
okay,
they may throw him a couple extra dollars and he'll do like a song or he'll do something on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst shit ever. It's a million niggas on stage with his entourage. He can't even move to, you know what I'm saying, address the crowd. And a lot of those cats, their regular performance is just like a walkthrough performance. It's just I'm on stage with a bunch of niggas. I can't really engage the crowd. I'm pretty much just letting y'all rap most of it. And these niggas, all you do is hear them in the back. I've seen that shit so many times. I'll tell you what though, on the sidebar, one nigga who I thought was gonna have that type of performance that I seen like early in his career, Rick Ross. That nigga was up there by himself, rocking the crowd with some straight hip hop shit. I was thoroughly impressed.
Because
I've
Rick
been a Rick
Ross
Ross
wanted to
fan
be a
ever
rapper.
since.
Rick Ross
True that.
always wanted to be a rapper.
True
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
True that.
And then he
I was
found
like,
his
this
lane.
nigga. I'm like, this nigga on stage by himself.
Yeah.
Nobody, no entourage.
Isn't it funny how that stands out? A dude
No
finds
it
weed,
something
does.
no weed
stands out.
roller,
It
Yeah,
does.
no
crazy.
no
I'm
weed
not
hop.
rapping over his lyrics, but we
Yeah.
ain't even gonna get into that. That's
Uh,
another. That's a whole
Oh, that's a whole
episode.
nother show right there.
we
Oh,
can
another
talk
show.
about it. We can talk about it next week on the turntable.
I want a whole show dedicated to that.
Next week on the
That's gonna be
turntable.
lot of finger wagging, lot of finger wagging.
Oh my god, bro.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think that we've covered as much as we can on this show here, and I'm interested to hear what the crowd has got to say, what the listening audience has got to say
Hey,
about these
mention
topics.
some conscious artists we're not hip to. I want to hear it.
Ooh, I'd like to hear that. I would definitely like to hear that,
I'm on
and
no
some
conscience.
and some street stuff. If there's some
I was
street
gonna say,
MCs out there that we haven't heard of,
I feel
I'd
like
like to
if
hear
it's some
that too.
street stuff out there, we know it
to be
because that stuff
I'm
is pushed
I'm
to us.
I'm trying to create balance, Siege. I'm trying to create balance.
I feel you.
about
So
Balance.
with that,
The turntable.
that's right. That's right. So with all that, y'all know exactly what to do. Jinx, you know what to do. Tell them. Tell them.
Comment,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't got nothing for subscribe. Just subscribe. Guys.
Just subscribe. It's gonna do it. Subscribe.
Yeah.
We'll work on subscribe next week.
Yeah.
That's it from the turntable. Peace out, y'all. Be safe.
that.